Hey everybody, back with a different kind of tutorial video today. So I posted this question about a week ago to the YouTube channel and said basically what kind of out of the park questions would you like me to answer in a tutorial video. So what I figured I'd do a little bit different with this is kind of more casually go through these questions and answer them, give you some of my thoughts on it, talk off the top of my head about some of it. Just kind of more an informal discussion than like a formal tutorial video where I'm going to tell you, well, this is how you do or how I do this one specific thing. I'm more just going to go through this. And you can see all the channels I subscribe to here if you wanted to know that. I don't subscribe to many of the... I watch way more channels than here. I don't do a lot of the subscription stuff. So anyways, let's go ahead and go through some of these questions. And I will say, as some shameless self-promotion just before I start, if you like this kind of more informal thing where you can ask questions and then also have the ability to ask some follow-ups and things like that, consider joining my Patreon page, which is in the description of this video. For just a few bucks a month, I think $5 a month, you can get a monthly Q&A. You can name an out-of-the-park prospect in my sim and things like that. So check that out if you're interested, if you like this kind of style video, especially in the ability to kind of interact more like this. So let's see, Nick wanted to know about a few different things. So hiring personnel, free agents to sign on a budget, when to make in-season, mid-season adjustments, and in-game strategy, and which types of pitchers are best suited for a ballpark. So let me say, first of all, the ones that I don't have as much to say on is which free agents to sign on a budget. I mean, it really depends on your sim, right? Are you doing an MLB universe or a fictional one? What year are you in terms of, like, you know, if you start a sim and you're 2 years into it in 2023, what free agents are typically out there that are cheap? I'm not really sure, just because I don't typically go through and memorize that kind of stuff. But oftentimes, I would say if you don't have a strong preference on the free agent you're going to sign and you just need a dude to fill a certain kind of role, wait until the preseason starts, wait until spring training starts. Oftentimes demands go down a bit. In-game strategy. So oftentimes the only things that I control are pitching and batting changes, as well as base running decisions. The one thing I don't think the AI does great in addition to that is knowing when to bring the infield in or when not to. So sometimes I take control of that. But other than that, I just make substitutions and also do the base running. I don't do a lot of like the when to bunt, when to do that, when to do this. I leave that to my manager for the most part. Pitchers that are best suited for the specific type of ballpark. If you are in a ballpark that allows a lot of home runs, target pitchers that are good with movement. Movement suppresses home runs. So if you're in Oriole Park, if you're in Coors, if you're in, Citizen Bank, go find pitchers, prioritize movement. That is the one thing that is really good. I mean, I think it's always good to target pitchers with high movement or high stuff, because you get fewer home runs and more strikeouts respectively with those. But that is really what I would try to target. And you can care less about movement, and you can maybe target more fly ball pitchers or care less that they're a fly ball pitcher. I don't think it's ever good to prefer a fly ball pitcher, but you don't have to prioritize avoiding them as much if you're in a stadium, I don't know, like the Marlins Stadium, where home runs aren't as much of an issue. So hiring personnel and mid-season adjustments. I don't know. I mean, I think I'm always evaluating my team. I don't think there's one point in the season when I just say, this is the time when I make trades or things like that. I would say if I have a new guy, like a rookie I'm trying to give a chance to, right? I typically give them 2 months. I typically, 2 months into the season, they've collected a couple hundred at bats. At that point, I might look to send them back down for more seasoning or something like that if they're not achieving. But that's if I'm trying to win now. If I'm rebuilding, I don't care. So hiring personnel, let's open Out of the Park here. This is just a random sim that I opened for this video. And let's go ahead and go to the transaction page and personnel. So, to be totally honest, say I'm looking for a manager, and let's go ahead and look at coach ratings, right? So with managers, if they're in my minor league system, I want them. I look at people with good development. I'll prioritize that. And I do want to say as a disclaimer, this is the first season with the new coaching system. And if there are things that you found that I'm wrong about here or you disagree with, feel free to let me know. I think generally in previous versions, especially last year's version, I had more time, was able to dedicate more time to spending times on the Out of the Park forums or the Out of Park Reddit, getting other people's ideas on this. I haven't had the time to do that as much this season. So with just managers in the minor leagues, I'd say teaching development and then the relationship with the players are the things I look at the most. If I'm looking at, say, pitching coaches, I prioritize teaching pitching, and then obviously if they're in the minor leagues, development. If they're in the major leagues, maybe, and I have an older team, maybe handling aging. With my base coaches and things, and hitting coach, same thing, except instead of pitching, I prioritize teaching hitting, obviously. Base coaches, I want guys who can teach outfield, infield, catcher, and running. I prioritize those. With my scouting director, it depends on where I'm at, but typically I like guys who are really good at scouting amateurs and really good at scouting international. I feel I'm more able to scout majors and minors more reliably through stats, and I also prefer highly favors tools rather than ability, because you're more likely to find superstar players with that. So that's some things I do with personnel. Do I pay attention to the staff roles is probably a question you'd want me to answer, like their relationship here. And the answer is not really. I have found in my Phillies sim that if I have a team that's winning, the staff cohesion is great, even if they have multiple struggles with things here. And I've also had staffs where they all work well together, but they're losing because the team's bad and the staff cohesion's poor. So I prioritize just having a good team, having coaches that are good at their specialties. I consider that long before I consider the relationships, because I found that having coaches that are good improves your team. It makes them better. You win, and therefore your coaching staff will get along. That's what I found. So I don't really pay too much. At the beginning, I was real tedious with the relationships, and I started to find it wasn't really worth it for me. So I stopped paying attention to it. So I hope that helps answer some questions about personnel and how I go about it. Again, I'm just kind of, the purpose of this Q&A is kind of more a Q&A rather than a deep dive on any one topic here. But hopefully that answer is helpful. So let's go ahead and figure out. So Clifford wants to know why he experiences so much pain in the playoffs, because the playoffs are random, Clifford, unfortunately, and really good teams can lose to a team that is quote-unquote worse than them. Kevin wants to know, he struggled with perfect drafts. And so, Kevin, I'm going to direct you to Sergeant Mushroom's page on this. I don't do anything really with Perfect Team. I haven't played it much. I am not in any way, shape, or form an expert on it. I am not in any way, shape, or form somebody who should be giving out advice on it. I do know that Sergeant Mushroom recently released a Perfect Team video that I saw. I haven't watched it just because I don't play Perfect Team, but Sergeant Mushroom is a reliable source of out-of-the-park information, so I'm sure his information on that is good. And I think it's about the drafts or team building. I can't remember for sure, but I double-checked to make sure that I had not hallucinated it when I saw it in my feed recently. It is there, and I would suggest going to watch that and following up with him with any questions in the comments. So W. Gregory wants to know trade deadline tips. Do stats or ratings matter more after a player changes teams? Yes, I did have some frustration with some players in my sim being terrible after a trade reform. So how do I choose the players to trade for? So a few thoughts on that. If we're talking, say, relievers, I'm not looking very much at stats, because you're probably trading for a guy, if it's like July, who's thrown 30 innings. I don't really care that much about a guy who's traded, 30, who's pitched 30 innings. I might look at his several seasons, but more I'm going to prioritize the type of pitcher I want. In Citizen Bank and my Philly sim, pitchers with really good movement. I like stuff too, and I want them to be adequate with control, but with relievers, I don't pay a lot of attention to stats in such small samples. Now, this is just a sim that's on day one because there's submitted for this, and there's no one's on the trade block yet. But the way that I find players to target are, one, the trade block, because you can find bargains. I'll also look at the strength overview, because say I'm like, man, my second baseman sucks. Let me see the top end talent out here. Who can I target? Who's undervalued? So I'll look at that. I'll also look at pending upcoming free agents. If I'm just wanting to bring in a guy who's on a 1-year deal, I'll look at some guys with that. Or I'll also use this player list, MLB player list, and look at, maybe I want to look at stats, or maybe I want to look at pitcher ratings, or maybe I want to look at batter ratings. Maybe I need a backup center fielder, so I'll look at, let me just sort by outfield range, right? And who are the best center fielders in the game? I'm on pitchers here, but you get the gist of, these are the kind of ways that I find trade targets. So many different ways. Look at the trade block, look at the upcoming UFAs, look at this player list, and look at the strength overview. Those are the way that I find players and decide who to target. And again, probably a combination of stats and ratings and their contract, more so probably ratings than stats, than in-season stats, especially with relievers. So that's kind of the way I look at that. I also look at splits a lot. If I need, my Philly sim, I needed a right-handed bat, infield bat, because I had a few infielders who were left-handed who hit poorly against left-handers, so I needed somebody who could come in and hit lefties for me. So I traded for Nick Solak. So that's another thing that I'll do to look at trade targets. Let's see, what further questions do you guys have here? Mike wants to know how to change the league structure like in my Philly sim. Sure. So I can show you how I did that. I think I probably remember it off the top of my head. So I go to game settings here and league settings and leagues and teams. And then I think my computer's running an update, so it's running a little slow right now. And right here, you can basically edit league structure and move everybody around. So what I did is I moved every team to the East Division in each league, and then I renamed them, and then I deleted the Central and the West. So that's the way I did that. And then I probably am going to make a fool of myself here and not remember how to do this, but you can edit the playoff structure somehow, and I did it. I'm sure somebody who's done this more than me is yelling, "It's under the blah, blah, blah part, you idiot." Because, I forgot to look at this before I started. So I'm having some issues here with the mouse or with my computer because it's running an update. Maybe I should have waited. But anyway, so you can edit customize playoffs. Here it is under options. Nailed it. So you can customize the playoffs, go in here and pick all this different stuff, which is pretty cool. You can even say like best of 5, how you want it structured. You can give the higher seed an advantage. You can give them like a 1-game advantage where they have to win 1 fewer games, which is pretty cool. So you can go in here and set up your playoff structure. So that's the way that I restructured my Phillies sim, like you were asking about. So Lucas with some questions here. So what are some strategies to turn a franchise from a top 3 payroll World Series contender and a playoff contender with a much lower payroll, and most of your team's value has begun to decline? Really, the best way to do that is to build through the minor leagues, through the draft and through international free agents, because that's when you get the most value on a contract, is when they are when they're on their rookie contract. So albatross contracts about to clear. You don't want to reinvest in expensive free agents. I think that makes sense. I think I always like to trade for players who have already signed a below market deal with a team, right? I think that's a good way to go about rather than dipping into free agency. Now you're the Mets, so you can probably afford to dip into free agency, honestly. But you'll run into a time for a few seasons when those contracts are painful, but eventually you'll come back around and be able to spend money again. I think it's good to invest in player development and scouting, but don't be scared to adjust it from year to year. Maybe you're at 24 million on each right now. Don't be scared to drop to like 16 for a season or two to give yourself more flexibility. You've noticed that after simulating, the majority of players have injury problems. I have not noticed that. That's interesting. How do I handle free agent players or fragile players? I'm sorry. I don't have a hard and fast rule. I am definitely more hesitant to sign fragile players, especially pitchers or especially player positions where I don't have as much depth. I remember my out of the park sim last season for 21 for the O's. I signed a free agent shortstop who is fragile, but I also had a decent backup shortstop, and I had a shortstop prospect who was like 2 years away. So I had many options if he got hurt. And in a trainer, the things, I mean, I want the trainer to be good at generally prevention, especially arm injuries. That's probably the top thing I prioritize because I want my pitching staff healthy, and those are typically the most long-term injuries that you run into, and they're the hardest to replace. So Nick wants to know about, he was having issues with it freezing. Any suggestions on what kind of computer, what you need? Honestly, man, I would just look at the recommended settings here. I'm on the Steam page, and they have the second recommended for Windows, for a Mac. So I would just make sure you have the recommended, go above the minimum, and you should be good with that. And then Cedar and Jeremy both want to know about Out of the Park Go, which I have not played. Maybe somebody in the comments has played it. You played the free version with fake teams. You don't see an option to hire staff. Does the free version not have it? I don't know. Maybe I'm sure somebody watching has played and can answer that. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of more casual, less of a deep dive into these topics and just kind of discussing them. Again, if you want to talk about these things more in depth or have this kind of Q&A more frequently, check out my Patreon page and yeah, support it if you're able. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. And I'll talk to you guys on the next video. Thanks. Bye.